Another thing is I'm really, really conflicted about the nature of my creativity. This idea that in journalism school, they call the theory seduce and betray. That when you go into an interview situation, your goal is to gain the trust of that person and to get them to reveal something very intimate that you're going to betray by revealing to the public. So you're basically going in there to charm them and then to hurt them. And so much of my creative process is that way because, for example, the gut story,
Mm-hmm.
the story in which the guy puts the carrot up his butt, that was my best friend at the time in like late 20s. And he got fantastically drunk and he told me that carrot story. And I honestly believe he had never told anybody the carrot story. And I kept that story in my mind for, 10, 15, almost probably 20 years until I found a way to put it with 3 similar stories and make a larger piece out of it. And the first time I read that story, I hadn't seen him in maybe a couple of years, this friend. And I look across this big auditorium and there he is. And I'm telling his carrot story in front of hundreds and hundreds of people. And the look on his face, he's just stricken. And he hasn't talked to me since. And this is why, even David.
But did you use his name?
No.
Then fuck him.
No, but
What's wrong with him?
People still feel betrayed. And
Get over it. You need to hang out with more comedians. If he was a comic, you'd be laughing.
well, David Sedaris has told me, he said his family is very reluctant to share their lives with him anymore because he's kind of made them involuntary public figures and they have to deal with the fallout from these stories about them. And really only his brother and his sister Amy have kind of been able to spin this in a good way. But it alienates a lot of people. I had a hired car from Philadelphia to New York once on tour. And as we were going past Liberty Hall in Philadelphia, this great guy with a Philly accent driving the car, he points at Liberty Hall and he says, "That building has stood for 300 years. I bet you can't tell me why." And I just looked and I said, "Because the bricks are laid in Flemish bond." I think that's probably it. Where the bricks are offset in such a way that they bond in the center. It's called Flemish bond. And the guy's so silent. Nobody's ever answered the question. And his father was a bricklayer, and he was so proud. And he goes, "You're right. Nobody's ever said Flemish bond. That's why it still stands." And we were best friends and just talking like crazy all the way into Manhattan. We get into Manhattan. There's 2 guys walking down the street. The guy goes, "Oh, Christ, I hate coming to New York. The fags." And I said, "Well, I'm married to a man, and faggot is pretty much my middle name." And that poor guy had to do this whole sort
Dance.
of rejuggling of everything. That the guy who knew Flemish bond was also one of them.
Oh.
And it was one of those wonderful kind of icky but necessary moments. And, they're horrible, but, things are better afterwards.
You must have loved that moment, though. You?
No, it was a horrible moment because I felt like I was throwing away any kind of chatty, conversational relationship I had with this guy. He seemed like just a salt of the earth, great, funny guy. And it was just kind of going out on a limb and saying, okay, he's going to hate my guts after this.